Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're going to give a couple of minutes to allow all of the audience to get into the Zoom room. So we'll start in just a moment. Okay, I don't want to wait too much longer because we have so much to cover today. We will just get started as people continue to come into the room. So, welcome to our dialogue on women and non-binary people and people who can become pregnant, drug use, and aging. Firstly, I want to introduce the Women in Harm Reduction International Network. WHRIN was founded in 2009 with the goal of improving access to and quality of health, social, and legal services for women and people who are assigned female at birth who use drugs. We are led by people with lived and living experience. We work on issues that matter to us to raise awareness, spread accurate information, and create spaces for discussion and advocacy. We were inspired to host this event by the upcoming International Day of Older Persons, which is October 1st, and because we see a lack of interest in the needs of our elders, both in mainstream medicine as well as in the harm reduction community. Once we are no longer seen as a vessel for pregnancy, we're discarded and pushed aside. Our goal with this event is to start a conversation that will inform a position statement we can use to draw attention to the knowledge and service gaps faced by this population and advocate for change. In this webinar, sometimes we're going to be talking about women, which obviously includes trans women. Sometimes we're going to be talking about people who were assigned female at birth, people who menstruate, people who have the capacity for pregnancy. Sometimes we're going to be talking about people who are perceived as women in the world, which includes some non-binary people like me. If it's unclear exactly who we're talking about, please ask for clarification in the chat. As our understanding of gender evolves, language tends to lag behind. So we accept and understand that we're all learning and growing in this together. So please feel free to offer language suggestions in the chat as well if you hear something that could be corrected. We encourage all of our audience to put questions into the chat at any time. We're going to hopefully address some of them in the chat and then some of them at the end of the webinar. This session is being recorded. We will not identify any individuals in the recording, but just issues and people who ask questions. We won't be using your names or anything like that. We will be sharing the recording with people who have registered so that they can watch it if they're in other time zones. I know for some of our own group, it's very late or even in the middle of the night. So we want to make sure that this is accessible to everybody. We had planned to provide Spanish interpretation, but our interpreter has canceled at the last minute. So we want to offer our sincerest apologies to everybody who was hoping to hear Spanish interpretation. Patricia.
Queremos dar una disculpa por el último momento. Tuvimos una cancelación para la interpretación de este webinar y de verdad les pedimos disculpas a todos los que esperaban escuchar este webinar en español. La grabación la podrán accesar al final y estamos tratando de resolver ese inconveniente.
Gracias, Patricia. With that, I will begin introductions. Hi, everybody. I'm Joelle. My pronouns are they, them, ella. I am a registered nurse who's worked in perinatal and neonatal intensive care since 2004, and I've been doing harm reduction since 2010. I'm one of the co-founders of the Academy of Perinatal Harm Reduction, and I became passionate about advocating for people who use drugs after realizing that everything I had been taught about drugs from childhood through nursing school was wrong. We are also joined by Nancy Poole, she, her, ella. Hi, Nancy. Nancy is the director of the Center for Excellence for Women's Health, a non-governmental organization that does research and knowledge exchange hosted by Columbia Women's Hospital and Health Center in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. In that role, she leads knowledge translation, network development, and research related to improving policy and service provision on gender and women's health and substance use. Welcome, Nancy.
Thanks.
We are also joined by Daphne Chronopoulou, she, her, ella. Daphne is the WHRIN PUD chair. She's a writer, blogger, and radio producer. She's a feminist and an activist who has worked as a volunteer teacher and for environmental causes. She has been a drug user for many decades. She's a founding member of PeerNups, which is the Greek drug user peers network, serving as its executive committee, and she is also a well-known voice of drug users in Greece through her articles, books, radio shows, social media, and activist presence. A firm believer in human rights, against the prohibition of drugs, and an advocate for drug user visibility, community participation, and peer involvement in decision-making and harm reduction. Daphne believes that WHRIN PUD has a very important role, not only for drug users, but also for influencing society against stigma and implementing fair laws and policies. Welcome, Daphne.
Hello to all. I'm very happy to be here.
We are also joined by Patricia Zuniga, she, her, ella. Patricia is a member of the WHRIN Strategic Advisory Body and a binational Latina advocate for women's health and human rights. A clinician and educator with more than 25 years of experience working with underserved and marginalized women and their families in the San Diego, United States, Tijuana, Mexico border region in the field of HIV care and harm reduction. She is the founder and director of the Wound Clinic, an independent, mobile, street-based homeless clinic. Her research examines the barriers and risk factors, individual, social, and structural, that prevent access to care, especially for individuals with recently acquired HIV infection and substance use. Welcome, Patricia.
Thank you, Joel. Muchas gracias. Encantada de estar aquí. And very pleased to be here with you all.
And last but certainly not least, we have Louise Vincent, she, her, ella. Louise is the executive director of the North Carolina Survivors Union and a member of the National Survivors Union's leadership team. She's a human rights activist specializing in women's health, drug policy reform, and the meaningful inclusion of people who use drugs. She holds a master's in public health from the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and was the inaugural recipient of the Any Positive Change Award, established in honor of Dan Bigg in 2018. Louise's passion and expertise have created opportunities for system change and movement building locally, nationally, and internationally. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to start with topic introductions from each of our speakers. Daphne, take it away.
Hello. I would like to speak about something very important that I've come across very often in my work in Euro Input in many countries. Um, I remember, I don't know if you remember it, it's an older book, The Change by German Greer. She describes how she's sitting with a friend at a cafe at Beaubourg in Paris, and they realize that the waiter does not notice them. Even when they give an order, the waiter forgets them. Whereas he's very eager to go to younger women or to older men with their company. They are both over 50. Then the book was published in 1991, and although many things have changed in our societies, ageism and the invisibility of older women not only has not changed, but I have a feeling that it gets worse and worse, especially because in the second half of the 20th century, youth was idolized somehow. And it was very nice, of course, but after that, there is another excuse for us women to be totally ignored in society. We become invisible. After 50, slowly and steadily, we become invisible. We are obsolete. As Joel put it some minutes ago, when we are not a vessel for pregnancy, we become useless in society. And society shows it very easily to us without any politeness or any, I don't know. It's very strange. And it's our traditions. It's our traditions that even with the women who are getting older, who are over 50, our heroines for us are younger. From Juliet to Medea, from Jeanne d'Arc to Anna Karenina, they are all young, and we are the invisible. Even writers in their 50s, 60s, women writers, write novels about younger women. I do not mean that ageism does not exist, does not affect men also. Of course it does, especially in our times with this idolizing of youth. But men are affected when they do not, let's say, when they are not successful, or when they have something extra with the age. The age is not enough for them to make them totally invisible as it does to us. She knew the sun still shone, but it never rose. She was traveling north, away from the sun, wrote Doris Lessing. And I bring it here because it's very interesting to me that even we, the women writers, have avoided touching this subject. When I speak with a friend, and a woman friend, and I speak about our age and my age and say, look, this changes, this doesn't, I don't know, something. Very often the reaction is, oh, no, don't speak. As if I was saying that I have something that is contagious, something that is dirty, something that is not proper to mention. It's just age. And only the lucky ones will we reach it, we reach 50, 60, 70. But for us, it's very tough. And I started with this because it affects all women in our societies. This invisibility and this affects us all, but more it affects, of course, the using women, because the women who use drugs are invisible anyway. I do not think I say something new when I mention to you that in the patriarchal society and tradition, a woman is a wife, a mother, a daughter, always identified in relations to others. This is very well known. I don't say something very rare. But what I was thinking is, what is a good woman? A good woman, a good mother, a good daughter is always a person who sacrifices herself, a person who does not search, does not seek her own pleasure. She gives children, she gives pleasure. She doesn't seek it, she mustn't seek it. She has to be sexy, but not search for sex. She has to offer it. So she is really a vessel, as very well, as Joel put it very well. We see it very, very, very specifically with drug using women, that the only way to be accepted somehow, even in harm reduction situations, even in clinics, is to be young and a victim. We'll see a picture, I think, that shows how media always, this is a picture very typical. When you read an article in a newspaper about women who use drugs, it's usually black and white. It's usually a woman that is sitting on a floor, pavement, a dirty bed, always with his hair in front of her house, her face, always unhappy, and always, of course, young, because she has to be a victim. If you are a victim, if you approach harm reduction and clinics and all that as a victim, somehow it's as if you admit that you didn't make the choice. You don't enjoy drugs. But if you're older, you can't really pretend that the big bad wolf came and lured you somewhere. So there is no place for older women. The idea is that you should know better. And we really know it, and we really experience it very bitterly when it comes to motherhood. Most of the women who use drugs have lost their children. Lost, I mean, they have lost custody. They lose custody because, and that is a very strange paradox if you think of it. Most societies, and Greece, where I come from, when a woman goes to jail, when she's incarcerated, they let her take her child with her or her children. Motherhood somehow is considered something saintly, something that is important even to a murderess or to a thief, a liar, I don't know what. But although you can be a horrible murderess, a horrible person, a very dangerous person to society, and society lets you have your children with you in prison, at the same time, you can be outside in society. And if you're a drug user, it's like that, to lose custody of your children. And when I say lose, I don't mean they don't live with you. I mean very specifically that I know so many women that the family or the father of the children does not allow them even to see the child for years. Most of our women get older alone. They're childless mothers. They are without friends. And of course, they cannot really approach harm reduction and clinics. First, because the only way to not lose your children or lose your job, I'll tell you about it in a minute, is to do not admit publicly that you are a drug user. The moment you do it, a partner, a boyfriend, a friend, a family member can potentially use it against you. And the very strange thing is that when after narco-prohibition, the other was created. In the beginning, it was the black slave with cocaine who was going to rape your wives. Afterwards, it was the Mexican, the lazy with the sombrero, always the other. In our times, years ago, I mean, since the last century, drug user is young, unemployed, and male. For this young, male, unemployed man, all programs, all laws, or medical assistance is created and designed. So a woman has really to strive to get into programs and therapies that are not made for her, are not designed for her. What we have found is that most of our women have a totally different profile. Most of us work. It might be in the streets, it might be prostitution, it might be offices, even bank clerks, I know, or shop assistants, but they have to hide it. Because if you admit it, no employer will allow you to work there. And you have to pretend in order to, so you don't use this harm reduction that is created for a totally different type of person than you. Most of our women work. Most of, I can say, they bring money home. Most of our women do not live with their mama like the boys, whereas many drug-using men still live with their family, especially around the Mediterranean or in various patriarchal societies. But a woman has to make a decision. Will she admit that she's a drug user and lose her job and her children and get somehow therapy, OAT, which is opioid agonist therapy, methadone, buprenorphine, etc., or she has to still, years after she stops using drugs, she has to buy her methadone in the black market and hide her drug use in order not to lose her job and her children. Childless mothers. And with this, I won't take more time from you. I pass the floor to Joel again. Thank you for listening to me.
I can't hear you.
You're on mute, Joelle.
Apologies, I will undo my headset. Thank you so much, Daphne. That was amazing. I can't wait to hear more. Let's go to our next topic introduction. Patricia, please, and thank you.
Hello. Well, after listening to Daphne, I will mention, maybe repeat briefly and try to focus on HIV and outreach and systemic exclusion and changing bodies and how all intercept and what all of us need to know. I refer to us and all because I firmly believe that every human being deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. And my intention today is together to help understand better where we stand in relation with HIV and with the challenges on the street and from the system, and also like how our bodies change. Although HIV has been around for more than 4 decades, now a chronic condition, the stigma around is strong, and in my opinion, is the most harmful cause of women's shortened lives, affecting all, but especially women who use substances as the most disenfranchised from HIV and healthcare services. We are born with so much labels at home, school, healthcare, and things assigned to us, how to be, how will be liked to behave, and what even we should wear, taking away our body's autonomies. And the only way that we can get our autonomy back on our body is to learn about how our bodies.
Y la única forma de poder saber cómo es que nuestros cuerpos funcionan y saber al respecto, el proceso de envejecimiento.
Birthday is a natural process, and we should not consider aging at 45, 50, or 60. I also like to use the word mature, wise, and experienced women as opposed to older and age. Women bodies mainly are protected from puberty to premenopause by hormones, and it's the natural protection of our bodies. But also that we are, everything is focused on pregnancy, and they consider us like incubators and like carriers, but in very small location. And I'm like, congratulate Joelle for the perinatal harm reduction and network. That we need to focus on women, and we need to focus on the effect on medicines. And but we don't need to be centralized all of our attention on what they so-called drugs. I call them medicines, and I like to use the word medicines instead of drugs or substances, because all women that I know use medicines because they want to relieve their pain of the trauma and the organic pain that we all get at some point. And that's why medicines are for. But all medicines and substances that we ingest have or eat have effects on us. And so mainly we have differences on how we assimilate and how our physiologic function take the medicines. And we know for a fact that we have a slower digestion. The system or in women act sometimes slow. Also, the renal clearance for substances are slower, and doses needs to be adjusted, not only for opioids, not only for any medicines, HIV medicines. So in order for dose adjustment, it's not that one dose fits for all. We really need to know, providers need to know, what dose is the best for the person that is in front of them. Also, I would like to talk about systemic exclusion. Or how the policies are being made and decide on economics, who's worth it to have a treatment, who deserve to have a treatment, morally, who's behaving good to have a treatment, and their condition those treatments. Also, the way that in general, providers refer to women who use substances, to use medicines, are substance abuse. And so women become an abuser. And so any person that is either what Daphne was saying, becoming a victim or become an abuser. And so abuser, we need to really work hard on take those words out from our regular practice. And accept that we all need medicines and that we all need to take to have relief in our pain. And it's for years and years, even my grandmother had insomnia, and she was very common to take like a Valium to sleep. And we all need to sleep. And so we just need to find the ways to treat those symptoms. And also like with HIV, to know the medicines, how they work. And we as women need to build up on the different narrative and the different approach when we present to the providers. And we need to become a team. I really have a lot of hope on women's providers and how they approach medicine, not only around pregnancy, not only around the child, but on the woman health itself. Also, in general,
Thank you, Patty. Patty, I think we're going to have to cut you off there,
okay.
just in the interest of time. Thank you so much. I know you have a lot more to say, and I want to get to it, and that's why I'm being such a taskmaster about the time. Thanks, everybody. I want to make a quick announcement before we move on to the next speaker. Our interpreter has just arrived, so to access the Spanish, please use the interpretation icon, which looks like a globe on the task.
Que se ve como un mundo en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Ahí es en donde
Nuestro intérprete ahorita llegué. Entonces, para escuchar en español, busca el icono de interpretación en forma de un mundo que aparece en la parte de abajo de la barra de tareas. Haz clic y del menú la opción que necesitas. Gracias. And now we will move on to Louise. Please do your topic intro now. I can't wait.
Hey, I am so excited to be here today. Maybe not to talk about aging. I still feel like I'm super young. But no, I heard years ago when I was in treatment, because I've been a drug user since I was about 13. One of the things that I heard early on in my life was, you don't meet older injection drug users because they're all dead. I know that today not to be true. Many of us suffer and struggle with physical disabilities, physical illness, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about disability and some of the things that come along with my getting older, and how that's affected me and the medical systems that I have to engage with, or that I don't engage with, or struggle to engage with. There is so little compassion for women who use drugs, period. There's no compassion for anyone that uses drugs, as far as I'm concerned, but especially for women with disabilities that use drugs. We are seen as being the cause, so it's our fault that we have disabilities, or we are crazy, and can't be listened to. This invisibility factor, and I feel it all the time, that I am not heard or not taken seriously because of disability, and because I couldn't possibly know my body. I couldn't possibly know what's going on with my body. And this is a real problem. We already don't listen to people that use drugs. And then we don't understand women's bodies, and doctors don't understand women's bodies, and don't take seriously the issues we have. I recently struggled.
Llegamos a tener. Recientemente batallé.
To struggle, and we have a poison drug supply in the United States, and there's xylazine in the drug supply, and it gives terrible wounds, terrible abscesses, and knocks your hemoglobin down. And so I experienced this really frightening and terrible reaction to this drug, and no one would listen to me. I could not stay in the hospital without, going through. They wouldn't give me my methadone. They wouldn't give me the drug. They wanted to move me to buprenorphine. So just a failure to hear, and a failure to have any compassion or any real real care. I've found that I have to go with an advocate. I have to, I can advocate for everyone else, but when I am the patient, or when I am the person, I have found that I must bring someone. Otherwise, I am not heard. And I see this in my work. I see this with the women that we come in. We run syringe service programs that are not designed for women's health. And that's a shame. That's a failure of harm reduction, period. Every syringe service program should have it should have services for women, and specific services for women. When we have a program that talks about reproductive health, more than just women should show up. And I just want to say we have a amazing program that we're working on that I take part in. It's called Narcofeminism. It's a program that many we have a narcofeminism story share where we're disrupting narratives, and we're disrupting the real by storytelling. And it is a really powerful program. I hope you can look it up online and check it out. It really is a powerful piece. We've been working on reproductive health, reproductive harm reduction for the last 8 months, and some of the stories and some of the stuff that we are, the what we're finding around bias, and it's just amazing. And so I invite you all to check it out. It really is good stuff. And many of the women here are familiar with this work, and it's great. And I'm just so happy to be connected with women around the world, that care about these issues, that care about we have to care about ourselves, because nobody's coming to save us. I've seen that, like, things aren't changing fast enough. People are dying. We need to hold hands and really fight this thing together. And so to be here with WHRIN is a real privilege. And anytime I'm working with a network of people from around the world that use drugs, and I say use drugs, but that can also be access medication, not at the pharmacy, possibly, right? Because I have some drugs that I need that I can't get prescribed. And so if I say I'm a drug user, that people assume that's illicit drug user, but that can also mean that I'm treating health conditions. I'm not going to hold up the time. I know we have a lot of people to hear from, and I just really appreciate being here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Louise. I love that. Like Patricia said, medicines. We are people who use medicines. I want to now move on to Nancy to do your topic intro, and we have a few slides that we will get up as well. Take it away, Nancy. Thanks.
Thank you. Boy, this has been so neat to hear from all these other women. Louise, I'm really looking forward to going to the NarcoFem story share. I did not know about it at all, so thank you. So I was just going to talk, really briefly about one aspect of aging and substance use and drug use, and that is menopause. And, I think it's a really interesting one because it is unpredictable. and under-researched and stigmatized. And so it's just this whole area of misinformation and mystification and shame and misogyny and this whole brew of unfortunate intersections in some ways. And so, you know, I think with so little research on it, and especially on the links between our use and menopause, I think it really calls upon us, as all the other speakers have mentioned, about the importance of drawing on our own wisdom from our bodies and ourselves, and really trying to share it with each other and empower each other. Now, I did look up a bit about menopause, and this was one book from a Canadian doctor that I thought was a really interesting one. It's called The Menopause Manifesto. And the subtitle is Own Your Own Health with Facts and Feminism. So I thought it fit well with the WHRIN approach. And it talks about some of these things like hot flashes and sleep disruption and sex and libido and depression and skin and hair issues and outdated therapies and breast health and weight and muscle mass and all these things that may, you know, be a part of menopause or not. And it's so unpredictable. But I think it is really important for women who use drugs to think about how some of these health issues are already faced by women who use drugs before menopause, and therefore this may be really intensified at the time of menopause, and really important to know that you're not crazy. This is something that is an important intersection to understand. There's almost nothing written about substances in menopause. And when it is, it's sort of like the stuff in the tobacco column and the opioids column, that they're looking to find some challenge about the substance and earlier menopause. And, you know, that goes back to what the other speakers have talked about, as if early menopause is a problem and therefore, you know, the substance use is making it worse, kind of thing. So I think that's, you know, that is one of the challenges we have around substance use and menopause. But the third column, I think, is interesting because it comes back to women's voices and the fact that some research is showing that consuming cannabis, women who consume cannabis believe it helps with sleep and irritability and depression and hot flashes and muscle and joint pain. And so, you know, it's interesting because that there is some even limited evidence to suggest that cannabis can be beneficial during perimenopause with respect to those things like sleep and mood and bone mass. So really what we need to think about is that our drug use influences our hormones and our vascular system, and all of these processes underlie many of the perimenopausal conditions and experiences. And so we need to honor the fact that all this is going on and to really listen to our bodies. So I think the last thing I just wanted to leave you with was this quote book by Heather Carina that's called "What Fresh Hell Is This?" about menopause. But I love her message because it is the message for all of us. I want you to do whatever it is you need to do to get yourself through this, meaning menopause, in ways that you can access, that are effective for you, and that dovetail as much as possible with who you are, what you want, and what you feel comfortable with. So that's my opening statement about menopause and substance use.
Thank you so much, Nancy. And there's some talk in the chat. We are loving that you brought references and a book. We have only about 15 minutes left. And so if there are questions from the audience, please put those in the chat. We are going to try to get to as much as we can today. So I want to address the first question to Daphne. Can you talk a little bit more about how older women and other people assigned female at birth experience stigma and pleasure and the intersections with substance use and getting older or more mature?
Stigma and pleasure, really. I mean, pleasure is really frowned upon when you're an older woman. It's considered indecent. And I'm not talking only about sex, which after a certain age, you are considered, I don't know, something like a freak if you want to flirt or if you enjoy sex, but also even cooking. I mean, you have to cook for the family, but not get fat yourself. You don't have to. Or you, no pleasure is allowed. And of course, no drugs, because you are a mother, you are a saint, a virgin, even if you have children. So it is really, I think, pleasure is absolutely frowned upon in patriarchal societies for women. It's something that is somehow, the idea is that it dirts us. I don't know, it makes us dirty. It makes us not real women, really, because a real woman, a good woman, is a person who sacrifices herself, is a mother who puts her children first, a wife who puts her husband first, even a daughter who puts her little brother first. So what I wanted to say, and I won't take more time because there are so many interesting women that I want to listen to, not only speak, but what I want.
Daphne, you muted yourself.
It may seem that it may seem that things have changed, that we changed, that society gets better. In this specific topic, it doesn't. Nothing has changed. And also, I speak about these traditional roles, and somebody could tell me, but society is not anymore like that. No, it is, because we're brought up, we have been brought up by those films, those books, those myths, and that culture. It's inside us. And this is the reason so many drug using women, when they lose their children, they end up in the streets. And I use the words end up literally. They get killed in the streets from overdose or from not taking care of themselves. It's so many who really lose interest, because inside they feel that if you're a bad mother, you don't have a reason to live. I mean, you're not a woman. You lose your femininity. You lose your rights to walk on this earth. And with this, I will stop, because I could talk for hours about those subjects.
We could listen to you for hours, Daphne. Thank you so much. Our next question is directed to Louise. And I'd love to hear more about what problems exist for women who are getting more mature, who use drugs, and what are the consequences of a failed healthcare system?
Well, I can tell you the consequences of a failed healthcare system. I mean, you're looking at one of them right now. I mean, I hear people say every day, I would rather die than go to the doctor or go to the hospital. That is unacceptable. That is unacceptable that we have a healthcare system that now feels like you're going to the jail, right? People are terrified that if they go to the hospital that they'll have their children taken away. People are terrified that if they go to the hospital they'll end up in jail themselves. we actually have a hospital in Western North Carolina, where I'm from. Well, I'm in the middle of North Carolina, but out west, there's a hospital that has a clause that if you're an injection drug user, you are denied access to even clergy. So you cannot have a telephone, you cannot have any visitors, and you cannot have any visitors, and that includes clergy. I mean, and that is to stop us from using in the hospital. I mean, the bottom line is if they would give us the drugs that we needed, we would not use in the hospital. And I've said to them a million times, look, this is the last place I'd come to use. I need you to pay attention to me. Um, I, I am so disturbed by the healthcare system. My health has, there is so many areas in my own personal life where my health has, is not what I want it to be, because I cannot access and I cannot be honest with the people that I'm working with. And if you can't have honest dialogue, what is the point? So we find ourselves online trying to self diagnose, trying to get access to, medication and whatever we need. And this is not the way. I mean, I am not a good doctor. I've proven it. I'm just not very good at diagnosing myself. I give myself all sorts of problems, and I've learned that. But the alternative to me being my own doctor is me having a doctor that cares about me and who is compassionate and who understands that substance use is part of my life. And sometimes I use more and sometimes I use less, but I need to be able to talk about it because it impacts me, and it impacts what's happening with my body and what's happening with my life. We should not live. We have a right to health, right? We have a right to health, and just because I use substances doesn't mean I don't care about my health. And that is the biggest thing. I am a drug user who cares very much about being healthy, right? So that's I don't know why that's so foreign for people to hear, but it's a truth. And I'm sorry about my telephone. It's gonna, but being a drug user does not mean that you don't care about
Thank
your
you
health.
for that, Louise. I think that's so important.
Yes. Thanks.
Right. Yes. So often the way that we talk about substance use in our society is people who have given up on themselves, and we absolutely have not. We deserve health, and we're going to get it one way or the other. Thank you so much for that. Our next question goes to Nancy. How do race, gender, ability, chronic pain, environment, income, sexuality intersect with ageism, sex, and substance use? And feel free to just pick one or two of those to cover in the
Yeah,
time.
that could take me a while to talk about all that, right? But, I think what's so interesting is that we often, when we're talking about intersectionality, we often talk about race and gender and income, right? Gender, race, class, whatever. These are the old, organizing things we get behind. And I think it's really interesting how it's hard to hold the gender piece in the story, for sure, especially around older women. And I think that other part that you mentioned around age really belongs in that first category of gender, race, and class, because the ageism, I think, is what people have spotlighted so well today. And that, for me, it is really important that we're not only caring about the sexual and reproductive health of young women and mothers, but that we're also thinking about women and non-binary folks all the way through the lifespan. And it just seems to me that of all that list of things you mentioned, that the age part really deserves a lot more attention. And that's why I was so happy to be asked to talk a little bit about women's health and ageism and substance use together, because to me, though, it really matters that we think about the age continuum as well as race and gender and income and environment and substance use and all the other things on the list. So thanks for, spotlighting that, or allowing us to spotlight it a bit.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I have one more question for Patricia, and then we will try and get to at least one audience question. So Patty, what are some issues associated with changing bodies, HIV, hepatitis C, and overdose?
Yeah, so I think the key issues is like our body change. We assume that HIV infections and hepatitis C cause chronic inflammation, and and that yields to disease progression. So we need to learn earlier about an infection and about how to prevent it effectively and to treat to avoid disease condition progression. Now, HIV medicines are more simple. Hepatitis C are also like more available and more directed to the type of virus that is affecting, and only last 8 to 14 weeks. So I think we need to be more precise on open up and to make sure these treatments and these prevention interventions are available for women, designing the proper programs for. Age is a key on when you get infected, and knowing about the diagnosis and to monitor the condition is also key for live longer. Also, like doses or changes, our bodies change, and we're less tolerant to higher doses. So we need to know what is not one dose for all. So we need to take that, and more women can be benefit from advances on science. The problem is that they're not available to everyone. So I will say, I would just encourage like women to ask for treatment, to advocate for treatment, not only women who use medicines, but all providers, non-providers, women in general. We need medicines, and we need good medicines and good treatments for women, so we can live longer and happy, and we can have fun also.
Excuse me. Thank you. That's so important. I'm so happy that pleasure and fun has been a theme that we've been exploring today. We just have a couple minutes left. We will probably go over slightly. My apologies to everyone. The question is for Daphne, and it comes from the chat. Can you talk a little bit about how culture, specifically Greek culture, has influenced your advocacy and access to services for?
Well, yes, I answered very, very briefly to Ria. I thank her for the question. Culture is very, very important. In Greece, we have a patriarchal society that we do not really accept that we have it. We think we're better and we have improved, but really family and all that is in the core. For me, it was very difficult. It was very difficult because I didn't want to be, how to say it, to really conform. And I felt it wasn't for me. I couldn't really find a program or something that would be useful to me. And I saw my friends, I saw so many women dying In the streets, so many women losing their lives, their livelihoods, their families. In Greece, it's very tough. It's still, you have programs that are supported by the state that advise the family to throw away the person who uses drugs as a means of making them stop drugs. Can you imagine how horrible, how traumatic, but how dangerous this can be for a woman in a society like the Greek society? I mean, it's a disaster. Very few of those women can go back. I have friends who were asking for clothes, asking the family for clothes so that they could dress to go outside of the school to see their children, and the family wouldn't give them. And they were bag women. They ended very rich families, and they ended up as bag women and they were ashamed to go and embarrass the child. This woman died in Exarchia Square in the center of Athens. She was beaten up without reason because she went totally mad, slowly and steadily. She went mad, and she couldn't see her child. She couldn't. She didn't have a reason to live. And you see it every day, especially in Greece. It's really, we have OAT, but at the same time, the state and many politicians, many doctors uh, uh, have no real good information. So they are treating patients and women especially as if they are bad girls. Bad girls. You'll end up a prostitute. If you're taking drugs, if you're using drugs, you'll end up as a prostitute. And I have to add something else. For other things, whenever I went to hospitals, to doctors, and of course, like a logical person, like a sane person, I gave my history to the doctor. There were so many times that the doctor tried to abuse me sexually in various ways, either by asking for sexual favors, even offering me uh, drugs from the clinic. Um, and I was thinking, if I could refuse because I could, how many women, it's not that you accept it, it's how dirty, how embarrassed, how like nothing you feel after that. And of course, you will never go back to a doctor. This is what was said before, and it's very, very typical. I mean, it's exactly what's happening. From North Carolina and from Greece, so far one country from another, and we have exactly the same experiences. Fear of going to the doctor, fear of asking for help. You can't have harm reduction that way. And I have to tell you, we are seen as prostitutes, and as if prostitution is a bad thing, of course. Bad women, bad girls. It makes me so angry. It's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about stigma and about all this. I find it such a waste. We lose so many people, so many amazing women. This is it, I think. I took a lot of your time today. Sorry.
No, I thank you so much for that, and thank you for sharing your personal experience. I know that is not easy. Well, I think we have identified the problems. We know what we know, and we know a lot more about what we don't know. I'm going to bring us to a close. I want to just offer heartfelt thanks to all of our speakers for being here. You are all brilliant, and I am so excited to hear more from you. Thanks to our audience for being here. Thank you to Lynn Jeffries for designing our beautiful flyer. Thanks to the interpreters, and everybody take note. The recording will be available for everyone who has registered. We are going to start working on right away. Thanks everyone so much for being here.
Thanks for having us. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye to everybody. Thank you for having us. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to listen to those amazing women. I'm very glad I met you. Bye-bye.